All right, good evening. Thank you everyone for coming. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is to look at objective design standards within the North 101 specific plan. Clicker stopped working. Okay. Okay, so to do quick little introduction of our project team. So from the City of Encinitas, we have myself, Sarah Cadona, project manager and planner. And then we have Patty Anders, who is planning manager. And we have Megan Openshaw, who is our assistant director. And then on the consultant team for Ascent, we have Matt Gelbman and Angela Kermuth. Sure. All right, so in the interest of time, we just ask that you guys please hold your questions till the end of the presentation. We have a lot to cover and to go through. So quick little run through of the agenda, what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a quick project overview. Then we're going to briefly go over what AB 2011 SB6 is and the ordinance that we will be implementing, and then we'll go into objective design standards, and then kind of finish off with next steps and open it up for feedback, discussion, and questions.
Hi there. So again, my name is Patty Anders. I'm the planning manager, and I just wanted to give you a kind of a deeper overview of what the purpose of the ordinance is. And the ordinance is to establish local procedures to implement two state housing laws, which is the AB 2011, Affordable Housing and High Road Jobs Act of 2022, and SB6, the Middle Class Housing Act, also of 2022. So these efforts allow the city to establish the permitting process and to have more local control on some design and development standards to implement AB 2011 and SB6 projects in the downtown Encinitas and the North 101 corridor specific plans. So the city is taking a proactive approach by preparing an AB 2011 and SB6 ordinance and developing new objective design standards for both multifamily and mixed-use developments tailored for the downtown Encinitas and the North 101 corridor specific plans as allowed pursuant to state law. So the city chose to focus on these two specific plans because they are older specific plans with non-objective design guidelines, and they have very unique community character and development patterns. And both specific plans have several properties that are eligible for AB 2011 and SB6 projects. So together, these actions help the city establish some local control over development in the two specific plan areas. The city would have less control if the city does not adopt an ordinance for the objective design standards for the specific plan areas. And I would like to emphasize that the project is funded through the HCD, or Housing and Community Development, via SANDAG, and therefore the project does not use any city funds to implement it. So in this, I'll pass the presentation back to Sarah.
So just to kind of give a brief overview of the background and what has previously happened. So we applied and received the SANDAG grant, like Patty was saying, and then in June of 2023, City Council initiated this work effort. Then in September of 2024, City Council approved a professional services agreement with Ascent. And then this past April, we hosted a community workshop. And then this is just kind of where we're at right now, and then what the future planning process is going to look like. So currently right now we're at the North 101 workshop. Then next week on Tuesday, we are going to have a downtown Encinitas specific plan focused workshop. And then we will bring it for the community-wide and joint PC and CC workshop, and then we'll bring it through hearing. So now I'm going to pass it over to Matt with Ascent.
Okay.
And we have some people joining us. So if you would all wouldn't mind signing in for us, that would be great.
Sure.
I'll keep going while people still sign in. Again, I'm Matt Gelbman. I work for a firm called Ascent. We've been hired by the city to help with the ordinance and help draft objective design standards on behalf of the city. So starting with an overview of AB 2011 and SB 6. These are some of the most, in my opinion, complicated housing laws that the state has adopted. They're in effect today, and they're intended, as they were passed, to allow housing in sites that allow commercial. So that includes multifamily residential development and mixed-use development on sites that are zoned for commercial uses. So the state is changing what's allowed in the city's zoning. In exchange for that, what the state has said in these laws is you have to meet specified eligibility criteria, specific development standards, and other requirements, which we'll touch on. But they're very, very complicated to understand and to use. That's both from planners and the city standpoint as well as for developers. So we're going to try and give you an overview of what those requirements are, but know that there are very detailed requirements that come with all of the components of this law. So starting with where these projects might be allowed, AB 2011 and SB 6 both allow projects in commercial zones. These are zones, as the bill was written, where office, retail, or parking are the principally permitted uses. So it defines what a principally permitted use is, and so that's the sites we're kind of focusing on when we talk about AB 2011 and SB 6 projects. Now comes the very complicated part. There's 3 project types under these 2 bills. There's the AB 2011 mixed income project type. There's an AB 2011 100% affordable, and then there's SB 6. We're talking of, I said mixed income. I'm talking about affordability requirements here, but these projects can also be mixed use, a mix of residential and commercial uses. Still with me a little bit, it's confusing, so just wanted to check. So when we're talking about these 3 project types, they're defined by their affordability, but they can be mixed use. So the affordability requirements apply to the residential component of any project, whether that's all residential or if it's mixed use. For the AB 2011 mixed income, when we're talking about affordability requirements under that project type, it can be very low, low, or moderate income restricted units, deed restricted units for rent or for sale, consistent with the requirements of state law, mixed with market rate units. And there's a whole schedule on how to satisfy the requirements of the mixed income project type. The AB 2011 100% affordable would be, again, it could be mixed use, but when the residential component has to be for very low or low income deed restricted properties, deed restricted units. SB 6 does not have any affordable housing requirements. With this kind of scale of income restricted and affordability requirements, there's different requirements that apply to each of those project types. The mixed income project type, because it has a little more permissive affordability requirements and allows higher market rate rents, comes with more stringent development standards in AB 2011. Less so for the 100% affordable. SB 6 is kind of its own can of worms. So it comes with other requirements that need to be satisfied in order to be eligible. I'm going to talk a little bit more about eligibility criteria. They vary by project type. Some of the criteria, to give you a sense of what needs what sites might be eligible. There's a maximum site size for some of the project types. There's criteria you need to meet based on what the surrounding uses of your site are, whether there's existing uses, if it's an industrial use or had certain previous uses. it can't be eligible. If it's a vacant site that's in a very high fire hazard severity zone, it's not eligible. There's a long list of environmental constraints that are defined in state law that would make a site not eligible. One thing I did want to point out that's a little unique and pretty specific is that projects that are looking to be eligible for the AB 2011 mixed income project type need to have a 50 feet of frontage along a commercial corridor. And again, state law defines what a commercial corridor is. Off the top of my head, I believe the definition is a street, a public right-of-way between 70 and 150 feet of width. And so you need to be on a roadway that's that wide to be eligible even for the AB 2011 mixed income projects. So we're here tonight to talk about North 101. But most of 101 is within that criteria. A lot of the cross streets, like in downtown Encinitas, I know we're focusing on North 101, would also qualify. So again, another reason for the city focusing on these two areas and developing objective design standards targeting those areas. There are also specific eligibility criteria for what the bill defines as regional malls. These are large shopping centers with a lot of retail uses. Again, consistent with the intent that the state had when passing these bills to generate housing in commercial shopping centers, essentially. So that's an overview of the eligibility criteria. If you have questions about what these things are, any of the specific criteria, we can take them at the end. We could probably do a whole 2 hours just on those. They're pretty complicated. So trying to give you a sense of what's required without getting into the details and overwhelming you. Another good tool that the city has published is this online map. It's a preliminary screening tool that starts to look at the principally permitted uses to identify which sites may be eligible, starts to look at the roadway widths to screen some of the sites out from AB 2011 mixed income projects. So if you're concerned about a specific site or area or just want to get a sense, this is a good way to explore and get an overview of what sites might be eligible. We have this static map on the wall, which is derived from this, so it gives you a sense of what sites in North 101 we're talking about. And we can also, I think, probably pull up the viewer if we need to get into that as well. So if you're interested in specific sites, this is a good tool. So key development standards that sites would need to meet if they are determined to be eligible. The bill states essentially that in the city of Encinitas, what would happen is the R30 overlay zone development standards would apply by default unless they're superseded by an AB 2011 SB6 standard, some of the things that we're going to touch on below, or the objective design standards that the city has in effect. That could be in the specific plan if it's objective and a development standard, or the objective design standards the city is looking to adopt. Again, the development standards that come with these projects types change based on which project type you're talking about. For all of them, the minimum density that would be needed to be reached to be eligible for an AB 2011 and SB6 project is 30 dwelling units per acre minimum. This is consistent with other state laws, and so it's kind of tied to that. And it could be up to 80 dwelling units an acre or more, particularly in sites near the transit center. And it scales down from there. So not all sites would be eligible for 80 dwelling units per acre. But that's the max, particularly around the transit center for AB 2011. At the same time, the maximum height would be 45 feet in that same area. Pretty challenging to get 80 dwelling units per acre in 45 feet, I think. So it's a little bit of a quirk there, but that's what it would be in Encinitas. There are setback requirements along street frontages for mixed income, AB 2011 mixed income project types. And there are also transition setbacks when you're adjacent to residential uses for those project types. Some project types are exempted from requiring parking. Some project types would be required to follow the R30 overlay development standards. So that's the summary overview of the development standards that would apply to the range of project types here. Some of the other requirements that come with this that are challenging for development to meet is you have to provide, some project types require commercial tenant notice and relocation. So if you're using these bills and you have tenants in your commercial spaces, you have to mail a letter to all of them. Depending on how long they've been there, you have to compensate them for lost rents, etc. There are also pretty stringent labor standards that come with these project types, and I mentioned before, SB6 did not have any affordability requirements. One of the reasons for that is because the labor standards and the burden of proof that required for meeting the labor requirements of the law are harder to meet. So that was one of the trade-offs in that bill. And then again, just to emphasize, projects would also need to meet the applicable objective design standards, and that's one of the key outcomes the city is looking to achieve through this project, is to adopt those standards for the two specific plant areas and adopt additional regulations and requirements that would apply to these projects regardless of their density, regardless of their height. What can the city do to shape and control what within the powers they have and within the requirements of state law. So that's the AB 2011 and SB6 process and requirements and eligibility. Now we're going to be talking about objective design standards. And this is really, again, where the city can affect control and where we want to focus tonight. So when we're starting to think about objective design standards, both the downtown Encinitas area and North 101 have adopted specific plans. They're pretty old at this point, and a lot of the language is very subjective, provides for a lot of flexibility, and those are not enforceable for developments under a lot of state laws. So the city's trying to make those more enforceable, more objective, and provide an updated suite of tools that kind of carry forward the vision, intent of those specific plans and address the objective design standards. The intent is to address a lot of the same topics and change it from more subjective language to objective language that the city can use and apply to development. Yeah, so I think I covered everything on there. What are objective design standards? So when we're talking about objective design standards, this is a term defined in state law and government code. And it really means that when we're talking about development and applying standards, what I think the standard says is the same thing that you all think the standard says, and we can all agree on that. That's really what the law means. So no personal or subjective judgment is used. That's objective. You can't hide the standards in a code behind the desk that you then pull out and say, oh, we forgot about this one. They have to be knowable. They have to be verifiable. Often this means that they're measurable. We use a lot of dimensions and things like that, but it doesn't always have to be measurable in that kind of linear feet or square footage type of approach. And under state law in general, objective design standards can be in the general plan, they can be in specific plans, they can be in different parts of the city's municipal code, whether that's zoning, subdivision, landscape ordinance, other land development regulations. So anything you're using to regulate development should be objective. Those really, under state law, are the only basis the city can use to deny a project, reduce the density, or render infeasible a development. And under state law, they're intended to make development more predictable for everyone involved. So that's what objective design standards are. I talked about the specific plans and updating the specific plans from subjective language to objective language. And these are just kind of examples that we developed. They're not exactly from the specific plan, but I think they'll give you a sense of what we're talking about when we say subjective versus objective. So subjective example is provide articulation to reduce the apparent mass and scale of the building and to be sensitive of the neighborhood. That's kind of representative of the type of language that's in the specific plans today. So the question when we're talking about objectivity is, what does it mean to provide articulation and reduce the mass and be sensitive to the neighborhood? So through this project, the objective design standards are going to come up with some tools. The city can say, here's what we mean when we say reduce mass and provide articulation. Do these things. Provide a volume break, and we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. So you'll see on the right, we start to move in that direction. For every 100 feet of building length, you shall have a plane break along the facade comprised of an offset, and then we have dimensions on how to do that. It should be 5 feet deep and 25 feet long, and it should go from the grade to the highest story. So those are just an example of how to move from subjective language to objective language, and kind of the intent of taking the guidelines in the specific plans into objective design standards. So when we start to think about what the city can control and how to organize and what topics we want to include in the objective design standards, we've kind of grouped these into 5 main categories: site planning, building design, ground floor treatment, open space, and other design topics that kind of get a little more detailed. So we're going to go through each of these to talk a little bit more about what we are thinking would be included in these. Site planning, we're really talking about building orientation, setbacks from the street, step backs on upper stories, setbacks from other uses, like other residential uses, maybe something that is appropriate. So how does the building relate to its surroundings? Building design, I think this is probably the area of most interest to you all, and I think a big focus of what I anticipate will be included in the objective design standards. And really, the key goal is to break up the buildings to not be a giant box, simply put. That's the goal of the objective design standards to building design. Whatever may be allowed under AB 2011 or SB 6 or another multifamily streamlined approval, what can we do to make it not a box? So minimizing the overall volume, changing the facade plane so it's not flat for a long stretch along the street, moving it in a plane, I guess that would be horizontally instead of linear, to give some variation, making the roof varied, whether that's with a slope roof or in a flat roof. You can change the pitch of the roof or the way it's angled. So we're trying to give these tools to provide some objective tools the city can use without restricting design, providing some flexibility in what the building ultimately looks like. Again, with the key goal of trying to make it not a big mass with big front elevation, particularly on the street, but also being sensitive to other uses, particularly where there may be adjacent residential uses. So, building design. So this is kind of an end product of a decently designed building, I would say, where we're trying to show, this could be flat all along the street. We have some tools that we're going to highlight here that start to vary this facade. So starting on the left, you've got building separation. So one of the things we're thinking about including is where you have really large project sites and you have a lot of building, break up your building. So it's not 200 feet long. Do 2 100 feet buildings and put a space in between. Put your open space there. If your building's a little smaller, but it's still pretty big, break up the volume and include something that's back and isn't such a square box right along the street. So you can see that kind of in the middle, and we've kind of got a perspective looking down where you can see we've carved out some of the building volume to create space and reduce the appearance of the mass. On the very right side, on the top, you can see facade offset. This is what I was trying to show with my hands. We're trying to move the facade back and forth from the front elevation to give some more variation there. So those are some of the three main tools about the actual mass of the building, but we also don't want blank walls, regardless of how much you do that. And so we start to think about things like facade modulation. Where do you put windows, doors, and balconies, and is that required, and how often should that be required? Again, so you don't end up with a 3-story building with no windows or doors facing the alley of a lot on the other side of 101, for example. And then facade design elements, we're starting to think about awnings, canopies, doorway entries, building materials, and highlighting the ground floor so that when you're walking along the street, it feels a little more comfortable and you don't look up and see like the same building 3 stories high, for example. That there is some variation again, and it looks a little more comfortable and welcoming at the ground level. Another way to provide variation and minimize big flat boxes is to provide roof variation. Talked about that. That can be done whether your roof is sloped or whether it's more of a flat roof. So these are a lot of the key tools we anticipate including in the building design section. Obviously a very key section for when we talk about multifamily and mixed-use development. All right. Another key topic that is a really strong focus in both the specific plans is ground floor treatment. I think particularly in downtown Encinitas, there is a strong emphasis on active commercial uses, retail environment, pedestrian orientation. It really discourages residential use on the ground floor along 101. But here we are talking about the potential for residential uses on the ground floor along 101 if projects are eligible for AB 2011 and SB 6. So one, we want to promote through objective standards active commercial uses consistent with the intent of the specific plan, but also try and address the residential condition as well to provide stoops or have entries along the frontage so it's, again, not a big blank wall along 101. So things like that. Thinking about building entries, some of the details at the ground floor, architectural elements, defining the openings of buildings, and having lighting, things like that. So open space is another category we anticipate including, kind of building on some of the requirements the city has for the size, dimensions of both common open space that everyone can use, as well as private open space, balconies, decks, patios, those types of things, as well as standards for what the design and minimum design requirements, uses that are allowed within common open space. So you don't just get a space and you get a little bit more. It's something people can use and is part of the development. And then other objective design standards start to get to another level of detail. So these topics are examples of things we anticipate addressing, but probably not to the same detail and emphasis of building design. But we'll talk about exterior finish materials, what materials should not be used, most likely, what are the landscaping requirements for these projects, how do you design walls and fencing, lighting for both the buildings, exterior lighting, as well as sites and open space, standards for access, parking, and circulation, and then service area, storage, and utilities, so screening things like utility boxes, electrical meters, and things all within the building. And again, trying to do this in an objective way. So that's objective design standards and a preview of the topics we want to hear your feedback on. Again, we had a community workshop. We're having this one tonight. There is one next Tuesday. 15th is Tuesday. Yes. Okay, good. and then anticipating a joint planning commission and city council workshop to share a lot of the same information with them and get their feedback as well before ultimately taking it forward for the hearing and adoption process towards the end of the year. So I think all this to say, we're still relatively at the beginning of the planning process, and that's why we're here tonight to talk to you all, get your feedback, what's important to shape the objective design standards. So we have 3 key questions we want to know about, or kind of prompted you for discussion. What are the most important topics to address through objective design standards? Particularly of the things we put up tonight, that's what we'd love to hear. Those are the things the city can affect and control, so we want to know how we should do that and what's the most important thing to focus on. And then for tonight, one of the key questions is how can the objective design standards be tailored to the North 101 corridor specific plan area? So if you're a user or very familiar with the specific plan and there's something that's important to you, that would be something we want to hear about. If you live or work in the area and there's some place you care about, we also have the question about key sites. So we just want to know what's important to you, what do we need to address as part of the objective design standards as we develop them. There's a few ways to provide your feedback. We have the boards over here, so if you want to talk about a site or a key issue on a map, we can take some notes and put it on the board. If you want to talk about objective design standards and something's important to you, you can put a sticky note we've got here and leave a note, or just put a sticky note as kind of a vote on some of these topics. That's another way. We also have these worksheets, excuse me, we're at a workshop, but we have worksheets that we'll pass out as just another way. It's the same 3 questions, same things we want to know, and just gives you prompts to provide feedback. So we can hand those out too. We do also have written open comment cards, so if you have something else to say, you need more space, anything like that, we can take those. And then if you have further thoughts after tonight and you want to share those, I think emailing Sarah would be the best way with any follow-up questions, comments, concerns, etc. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. That was quite a lot.
I have a question. So this is the second workshop meeting. So the first one was back in April. Do you have feedback from that one, or was it a specific area? Because this tonight is specific to North 101. Is that just Leucadia? What are the street demarcations when you're saying North 101?
Yeah, so the very first workshop was back in April. That was just community-wide, just to educate about AB 2011 and SB 6. We did have a lot of these same materials. We didn't have much participation at that one, so that's why we're here again, and we wanted to do some more outreach, and I'm glad all of you guys are here tonight to provide that feedback. So this one is focused on the North 101 specific plan. So we're really looking at objective design standards for this area specifically, and are there any key design elements or key characteristics of the North 101 specific plan that are important to you?
Okay. From what street to what street?
We have a map of the specific plan, and I wanted to share the handout that we have back there. That was from the PowerPoint from the first community workshop, so it had a lot of good information, so if anybody wanted to get that information, and then everything will be posted on the website. The maps demarcate the limitations of the...
well, can you just tell me?
I think it's from La
I don't have it.
Costa to
Encinitas Boulevard.
Encinitas Boulevard.
Yeah. Okay.
And generally along 101, downtown Encinitas goes all the way to the Bluff, and then City Hall is about. We do have a map of that as well. The other thing I wanted to say is, if you're here because you really want to provide feedback about downtown Encinitas, that is perfectly okay. Or we're here to focus on North 101, but we'll take any and all feedback tonight, regardless of where you want to focus your.
So the first one wasn't section specific?
No, correct. It was to really help unpack all the details of the bill because they're extremely complicated and have a lot of criteria. So we did a community-wide one to provide overview, and then now we're focusing on the 2 specific plans because we are developing objective design standards for each specific plan. So we wanted to really target the users and the people that are really, can give us great input and on these specific plan areas.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have the document available here about the current specific plan and its objectives? I know we're working to more clearly define that in an objective manner, but do you have something that already states what's held within it, or are you completely rewriting it?
So within the North 101 specific plan, there are design recommendations. Those aren't exactly requirements within the specific plan. And then separately, we have citywide objective design standards. That's applicable for the entire city, including the specific plan areas. Those design, within that document, there's design standards and design guidelines. So the standards is what is required, but it doesn't address, like, a lot of, like, the standards in there don't address like buildings over 3 stories, say, for example. So this is something that we wanted to do and create, is not putting a limit on that, and just creating design standards for these areas, because say if someone wanted to exercise these state laws, they can go up in as many stories. So that's kind of where we want to look at these objective design standards.
So those standards, you're saying you have citywide standards that are established, and now we're looking at corridor-specific standards. So my question to you is, if you have specific corridor standards in conflict with citywide standards, or do the corridor standards need to be in compliance with the over-city, in the far-reaching standards first? Because, I mean, what's the rule?
So within the document that we're creating, we're gonna write out the kind of the order of operation. We have looked at the citywide objective design standards, and certain ones that we like from there, we're pulling into the document that we're creating, and then creating additional ones on top of that as well.
So do you have a set of specific standards for North 101 already established that you feel like you would like to pull into this corridor?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the citywide, they're just more generic citywide.
Sure.
So what's unique, and to address your comment, specific plans are really an area where we do specific analysis, and we've done even some site scenario planning. We look at lot sizes, for example, right?
Sure.
What's in North 101
feasible
isn't going to be Red Smith's Ranch, or right? So it's really tailored. It currently has antiquated design guidelines, and they don't stand up to all the new legislation that we've all been forced to live with. So this effort is really great because it allows us to focus on the unique community character within this corridor, and so we can tailor it to this corridor. And that's why we want to hear from we did community-wide, of course, but also people that are very familiar with North 101, and that can really provide the feedback to help maintain some of that community character and that integrity that's unique to this corridor. So the specific plan will remain as it is, and then what we're doing is adding a new chapter to address these new objective design standards, so it can stand up against some of these housing laws that we're forced to deal with. And like Sarah mentioned, it doesn't address anything over 3 stories. So if we were to get an application that required 3 stories, we wouldn't have any mechanism in place to really help get that quality design and get the volumetric breaks and design that would help more aligned with the community character of the specific plan. So we're really trying to be preemptive and set the document up so it is in place if and when we do get those types of development applications.
So
there's a 45-foot height maximum. How many stories is that?
So for qualifying projects, there's a lot of criteria, right, that has to go into it. So if a project site did qualify, it depends on the story. If you do commercial space, you have to have a higher floor, and we're not architects, but we know enough. We've done this long enough to know, for example, you have a higher floor ceiling height requirement. So it really depends on the design. If you're doing all residential stacked, or if you're doing commercial with residential on top, you have different ceiling height requirements. So
for example, if it was all residential, how many stories would it be?
I would say probably 12 feet for residential. 12, 10. We have an urban designer here who could better assist us.
I would say 4 floors.
Yeah. And again, depending on roof pitch and all that.
Parapets and things like that. But 4 floors, I would say.
And that 45-foot height limit would only apply, based on my notes here, on AB 2011 mixed income projects on a commercial corridor that's greater than 100 feet. So,
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Greater than 100, not greater than 50.
greater than 100 feet in width.
Wow.
So that would, I think, include 101. So if you're fronting 101, you could get that 45-foot height limit. For the 100% affordable, again, with less development restrictions and the SB6 project type, the height limit would be 35 feet, consistent with the R30 overlay zone.
So, I just am trying to understand the map now that you said that. So, looking at this map on the east side of 101 all the way down from Encinitas up to La Costa Avenue, there's a lot of brown. So, that's not being touched. So we're only looking at the blue and green on this map?
Correct. Yeah, and the reason is because a lot of those areas that are not blue and green are a lot of the existing residential areas, so they would not be eligible for AB 2011 and SB6.
So this entire area from Encinitas to La Costa on the west side of 101, it's pretty much all green, so that would meet this, what we just said, with the 4-story, 100 feet, because it's green and that's eligible for the AB 2011?
Potentially.
Because you can get the mixed income or the 100% affordable, so it's got criteria for each different type. So we created this tool so that we could do a preliminary screening to know what portions of our city would be potentially eligible. And that's why these 2 specific plan areas were identified, because they had a lot of AB 2011 SB6. Now, no surprise, since we've done this, there's already new legislation that just became effective, changing this. So we're updating the tool so that we can at least have a first blush of screening criteria to see what areas might be subject to this new legislation. Mike?
Yes. 100 foot. Where is the go from outside of the sidewalk to outside of the other sidewalk? Where are we stretching? Are we between sidewalks? You count bike lanes and center medians. Everything is counted.
Yeah.
Within the public right-of-way, so it's property line to property line.
Because we have a railroad. We've got 2 lanes on Coast Highway that are 13 foot wide. So that's 26 feet. So we got another 74 feet somewhere that would give us that 100 foot.
Yeah, and we have a tool the city has that roughly estimates the right-of-way widths, and so we've done a lot of detailed analysis based on roadway widths, looking at roadways, looking at, and again, I'll repeat because some of you came in late, the first screening criteria for AB 2011 and SB6, it has to be a site that allows retail, office, and parking as a principally permitted use, which means it's a use that's permitted by right. And so that's our initial screening, and there's numerous criteria for each one. And if it's mixed income or 100% affordable for AB 2011, and then SB6 has their own criteria. So that's why our first workshop was really just trying to disseminate information on what these bills are. It's a lot. Even Sandag, has done workshops, and it's a lot of information to try to unpack it. So we've done a lot of this work up front, and it's reflected in these maps. here, and then there's an online tool that we have online. Anyone can access to see if their property or where these potentially eligible sites are located throughout the city. And Sarah has just worked at updating that tool to reflect the new legislation. So we're constantly trying to chase this. But again, the effort is trying to be proactive to gain some local control. We've been fortunate. We haven't had any AB 2011 SB6 applications, which is great, but we want to be proactive and not reactive and get these in place now so that we are well positioned if we were to get these types of applications.
What is in the new legislation that has already passed? For example?
It pretty much makes more parcels eligible. There's so many little nuances to it.
Parking, commercial.
Those are still the same.
Yeah, that's still
it has
the
that,
same.
but additionally it has what, for example?
For example, part of specific plan, small area was not included. It was not eligible. Now it is.
So the new legislation pretty much said it redefined what a specific plan was.
Oh.
So the definition of a specific plan changed. And so pretty much any property within a specific plan area, it had a criteria of, what was it? It needed to allow 50% residential or something.
I can't remember.
No. It was something like that. But now it makes more parcels eligible. So then that's why it's even more important to continue with this process.
Are there also more parcels eligible in the North 101 corridor specific plan?
There might
Or
be
just
few
added
changes.
Maybe
other-
a couple, but
It's
yeah,
not
the
significant.
tool is updated with the most up-to-date information
On the website.
I think those
Yeah.
sites generally stayed the same. What may have also changed is like some of the properties may be eligible for SB6 and weren't before, but essentially it's the same possible development scenario with other requirements attached to it.
If you could, on the slide that showed the maximum, like, where you have the roof line running for 100 feet, then you want to have a break. So what if we said 55 feet?
That might be an option. Yeah.
Or does Sacramento come back and tell us, no, you can't do that, it has to be 100 feet?
I think the city has the ability to set objective standards as long as they're objective, measurable, verifiable, and don't have personal or subjective judgment. Where the city could run into a conflict with the state and HCD is if you put so many requirements on the development that nobody can build and the projects can't meet the minimum density of the law because of the requirements attached. But doing something to the facade plane to require a break, I don't think would reach that level of development constraint. And I think the other thing I'll say is the cumulative impact of these is something to consider as well. When you add them all up, can someone still do a project both that's feasible and is a good design? So that's something we're thinking about.
But Dennis, that's great feedback. If your personal input is that you'd like to see a smaller linear foot before we require an offset, by all means, please write that down and let's get it in the record.
Well, yeah, because certain, like Leucadia will no longer be funky. It will be Sacramento-ized. So it'll look like crap. And if we could take certain communities like North Leucadia and have the line broken up the maximum amount or so that it has better aesthetics. I'm just wondering if it's going to stick or we're wasting our time.
As long as, like Matt says, as long as we're not impeding development, like one of our housing outlet programs is we have to do annual assessments to ensure what we do does not impede development.
Right.
So as long as we can do that.
Yeah, right. Who? According to who?
Well, it's what our housing outlet got approved. So So, but that doesn't mean we can't do things like require a break more frequently, right? To try to break up that bulk and mass and get that volumetric break or architectural offset. By all means, those are the kinds of things that we want to hear about. Because this is about objective design standards, so we do get into those nitty-gritty kinds of things like what makes Leucadia funky? What can we do? Do we need to have more offsets? Do we need to have, whatever it is that makes, in your opinions, I don't want to, bias your input, but we want to hear from you. What makes it unique and maintain that community character?
Right. Slide 17. It says density standard. You got 17.
Oh, that's the previous workshop's PowerPoint.
That had a lot of
printout of this one or a link to it.
So yeah, it'll be posted on the website, and I have my card here for anyone that wants a direct link, or there's on the sign-in sheet you could say like add me to the constant contacts to be notified of any future meetings or whatnot. So everything is posted on the website, and then all the meeting materials, meeting recording, that will be uploaded as well after the meeting.
And again, that has a lot more information and some of the details of the bill, so we wanted to have that available to you all this evening.
Because on it says AB 2011 100% affordable and SB6 project. So it goes a minimum of 30 dwelling units per acre. And then somewhere you said up to 80.
Yeah, we have that.
But then the next line says no maximum density.
It does have other requirements, right?
What do you mean by that?
The height
Right.
is kind of where.
I see where you're looking.
I can pull up
Did it typo?
Yep. Do you want the keyboard?
no.
80 dwelling units per acre or more.
Right.
So there's
Because they can also get density bonus. It's a lot.
Is there any way to alter the specific plan or to add any type of ratio of like concrete to natural land, like anything like that that would, instead of just like concrete jungle, it's like, oh, we want some dirt and some trees and some plants.
So we do. Yeah, so that's good. That's a good question. So we do have open space requirements that we are putting in, and then our city has a requirement for like 20 trees per net acre, right? And then we have like parking lot landscape requirements. So we do require quite a bit of landscaping, which is great, and so we do have those landscape requirements in here as well.
Do you have something where you can limit like the height of, say you have a big lot and you're going to put 80 units in it, do you have any kind of way that you can limit the height on the exterior building parts and allow for higher in the middle?
It has some step back requirements, like once they hit a certain height.
Step back. Okay.
The bill actually has step back requirements, like it allows them to go to a certain height and then it steps back.
So I think that requirement is only for one of the project types, and so one of the things we've looked at is the R30 overlay zone standards and trying to consider how we can kind of carry those forward and adapt those, particularly to require upper stories to be pushed back when they're adjacent to existing residential.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
like there's a 30-foot setback requirement when you're adjacent to residential. So we've done some of that detailed site analysis for this specific corridor to try to address some of those issues. Like when you're interfacing with adjacent residential, what does that look like? How do you soften that?
That was going to be my next question, because I have friends who live like in trailer parks, and one friend of mine literally is in a little trailer, and she just got this huge thing, literally like she can reach over and grab, like touch it, like it's so close to her, and it's like 3 stories pretty high, like she doesn't even see the daylight now. And so if we could do anything to prevent that kind of thing happening, because I know we've got Shamrock and we've got other, some places that we would want to like destroy their neighborhood.
Yeah.
I was going to share, we do also have a transitions ground floor setback adjacent to residential that we're considering. So not only would the upper stories be set back, but there would be a required minimum distance with some required landscaping along the fence line. So the whole first floor would be set back a specified distance, and then the upper stories would be set back from there when it's triggered by adjacent residential. However, that ultimately is defined in the objective design standards.
So.
We have a,
yeah. Go ahead, go first. Oh, hi, I'm Karen.
What is the minimum open space or park space per 1,000 residents? Local open space and park space per 1,000 residents by state law or local law?
We have that criteria in our general plan. We do have that, but in this particular effort, we're looking at...
I'm sorry, you'll have to be louder.
Can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we have that general plan. We have a requirement for 1,000 person in our general plan, but for this loop, North Highway 101 corridor, we're talking about open space for the individual sites to make sure that we don't have a concrete jungle. We make sure that there's a balance of structures to open space. You know, I don't want to misspeak, so I can look that up.
Thank you. And what is the maximum? Do you have a maximum?
No.
Thank you.
I don't remember. Tony, do you remember what that was? We talked about it in our... I'll look it up.
Thank you.
But the park, the city park isn't a requirement for 1,000 residents. It's a standard. So that's what we're trying to meet as we grow as a city, you know, since we were incorporated. It's not that it's a requirement, and the developer won't have to install a park in their development unless it's of a certain size. They will pay in lieu of fees for park development within the city of Encinitas. So I don't know if it's specifically applicable to this. I don't think we have any parcels that big in this corridor that aren't already in the planning development stage.
Yeah, I think she was asking
Well,
citywide.
Acadia is pretty bereft of parks, especially downtown.
Oh, I thought she was talking about Acadia.
I'm not
Or
sure.
any open space except the railroad.
Yeah, there's a general plan standard for 1,000. I think.
Right.
And then in this, we're looking at what would the requirements be for individual parcels to ensure that we don't have a concrete jungle, to ensure there's some, you know, screening of landscaping and softening.
Their own open space.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
And as planners, when we say open space, it's not just like there's a criteria. But it's either 200 feet of public, 100 feet
So we
of
would
private.
be, for this requirement, we would be looking at private open space. So that could be balconies or like little front patios for the individual unit. And then common open space would be like, I don't know, a picnic area that everyone can enjoy, and like a little courtyard that's accessible to all the units. So that's like kind of the difference between the open space requirements that we would be looking at here.
Yeah, and the provisions, our 30 provisions allow you to do like combine it to get 300 of like common open space, whether it's a community garden or like a passive park or land area, depending on what the requirement is. So,
Can this also apply to El Camino Real?
no, we
Does
just
it only apply? No, well, I think it's a valid question that we're already converting or building 3- and 4-story apartment buildings on El Camino. So this is talking about conversion of unused, vacant, retail, commercial space for mixed use. Why wouldn't we?
I love your question. So we already did the El Camino Real specific plan, and we specifically teed it up so that it could accommodate AB 2011 and SB 6 projects, because it's a huge corridor that has a lot of potentially eligible sites. So we specifically included in the objective design standards large enough to address the 3-story, because they have a lot of eligibility in that corridor. So you are spot on. Like it can. We hope that we get some of those.
So that would be a helpful comparison to your next workshop, to have that
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Please, all comments. We welcome all comments. If you guys would like to write them, or do we want to let people get up and walk around? Or sorry, yes.
You know, it's hard to make comments on something that is, you know, talking about the 101 corridor and the downtown Encinitas when we all live here and we know that there's not a whole lot of space on 101. Mm-hmm. We shop, we eat, we drink down there. There's not an acre of land. So, you know, we're sitting here, and I don't know how everyone feels, but well, I'm not confused. I understand design. But what I don't understand is this something that we don't have enough, you're not giving us enough time to digest this in an objective way, because you don't want it to be subjective, which is opinions. But we live here, and a lot of opinions can turn into objective. But I have it's hard to have an input when you want us to fill these cards out, and there's not a whole lot of people here. And there's a lot of people who live on the west side of I-5, and they use 101 all the time. I live on the east side, and you know, we always feel like we're being missed. But I want to learn what you guys are. We got consultants, and I'm thinking, why isn't our staff just dealing with AB 2011 and SB 6? I mean, why do we have to have consultants sitting here with our money, $500,000, paying for this talk, and then you're asking us to fill out cards? And I feel like most of what we're going to write is probably not objective, because we want to talk about the community character, and it's such a small, narrow strip. And where are they going to be parking is probably, you know, are they going to park on the railroad? I mean, there's so much more to learn before you have another meeting. July 15th, I think, is your next meeting. We need to get this message out to more people than just us. I mean, we're learning right now, and we still need to know more what you want to hear from us that can be objective, so that maybe what we're saying will be input in the general plan. But this is all set up for the general plan. Resource, I forget what it's called, but it's called resource something. And then once it's in there, that's a policy. This is all going to be policy, not just hearing from us.
Yeah. So I really appreciate the feedback, just to start, and I appreciate you taking the time today to show up. I mean, I think that's a big part of the process. So a couple of things that I heard in that is, first, you had concerns related to us allocating any type of funds towards raising or having consultants on the team. So this is actually 100% grant funded. So we're using HCD funds, not city funds, to be able to hire a team. What helps with having consultants is that they have specialties, essentially. So think about city staff as like your broad generalists. We focus on city codes, we have general practices, we have good understanding of, you know, the whole picture, right? And so sometimes we need technical assistance from people that like do architecture or design. We don't know how to design plans. That's typically why we have folks that know how to do that kind of stuff help us with this. I know that next week is coming up very, very soon, but that's not when we're making a decision by any means. And we're also, as staff, happy to take time to meet with more people before we get to that decision-making point. So today isn't the last day, nor are you required to give us feedback to make a decision on, but we appreciate your feedback, because all of your subjective feedback we can internalize and use and work with specific design professionals to try and create that objective design standards that still reflects that subjective feeling and desire to maintain your community character. And so that's kind of the exciting piece. And so I totally get, right now, today, there's a small handful of people in the room. Not the goal, but it's better than the last time, from what I hear. And that doesn't mean that there isn't more opportunity for us as staff to go out, even if we can't have our consultant teams who we super rely on to be there every step of the moment. But regardless of if they're here or not, we're still willing to take that extra effort to be able to meet with any folks that would like to meet.
Hi, my name is Brenda. I may have missed it. I did walk in a few minutes late. I'm curious, is AB 2011 and SB 6 just to meet RENA numbers? Are there annual or biannual limits? Or is this something that every property that you have marked is eligible to take advantage of?
Yeah, good question. So it is one of the many housing legislations that every jurisdiction in the state of California is subject to. It's not, I think I don't know that they specifically do it for RENA, and I would imagine that's part of what why they're passing, dozens of bills on every jurisdiction, legislative cycle after legislative cycle, is to trying to promote and streamline housing. But this one is pretty unique because it opens up areas that have historically not been available to housing, like El Camino Real, which is why we wrote the specific plan to tee it up to hopefully get housing there, where and not spread it out throughout the city. So I think they hope that it will help meet the RENA, but we are doing this to try to be preemptive. And as like Megan mentioned, like we're fortunate that we applied for a grant and we got money from HCD to help us, and Ascent won't show tooth their own horn, but they're actually the area experts in this. They actually helped start they wrote the first objective design standards for the state of California. So if anybody knows how to do it and do it well, and they've been tried and true, they have probably the most experience in the state of California. So we feel very fortunate that we have industry experts that can help us navigate. This legislation in particular is probably one of the most complicated that I think I've seen for housing legislation. It's super complicated. So we do want technical experts, and then as well as staff local expertise to help us frame our documents so that we can try to maintain as much control and maintain community character as much as we can if and when we get these projects.
So what I'm hearing then is, even if our RENA numbers are met with plans that have already been approved, and all of the developers that own the property along the 101 currently in Leucadia, for instance, choose to take advantage of AB 2000, they have the opportunity to do that.
Correct, regardless of RENA status.
Okay, so California or Encinitas' citizens, what is it called? The vote that the citizens had to have no building higher than 30 feet is completely down the drain at this point.
It does supersede it, yes.
Okay.
So what we can do, though, is we're trying to control the things we can't control, right? Mm-hmm. Like quality architectural design. Like Dennis had a great suggestion. Don't make it 100, make it 55, right? Do step backs, do building setbacks, create little entry, enclaves, if you will, or pop-outs, or do those kind of architectural things that really do contribute. And that's why we have these called out here, because they are architectural elements that really do help create quality architecture and a pedestrian-oriented and quality streetscape, and help control the development before it comes in.
Can I add one thing? I just want to make sure it's clear. Whether the city takes action on AB 2011, SB 6, and the objective design standards or not, these same properties are eligible for development. So the city's trying to take action to do what they can to provide objective design standards and ensure they're applicable to these projects if they do come in. So,
and we appreciate that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's clear.
So what was the requirement to get the grant, and what we required to produce for the grant?
The grant was to do implementing ordinance, because even interpreting the bills and doing the analysis of roadway widths, what site's eligible, what corridors eligible, is a lot of work. So it was to do develop an implementing ordinance and amend the 2 specific plans. That was the grant criteria, and that's what we submitted and got approved for.
What other cities got the grant?
Oh, I don't know.
There's a number of other agencies. I can't tell you all of them. I can tell you at least a former agency I was with, the City of Imperial Beach, got the grant. But different agencies are basically applying for what their individual needs are that still meet their criteria. It's from the Housing Acceleration Program grant funds, and essentially it's supposed to be related to those types of tasks, whether that be for like ADUs or whether it be for implementing laws around housing. There had to be some sort of nexus between that. But there were other agencies.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So every other agency applied for different things. We just happened to apply for this because we got council direction to do initiate an ordinance to do that, and we wanted to be preemptive and try to gain some sort of control over these larger densities and heights. So regardless of what agency got elected, I don't know what their individual, Matt, do you, because you were, okay.
I think a lot of the things Megan touched on, general plan updates, those types of things, but all with a connection to housing.
Because all agencies are concerned with the same amount of densities and heights, right? So for us, we wanted to be preemptive and try to gain some local control to the extent that we can.
Where does Captain Pino's lot fall in this plan?
So it is within the North 101 specific plan, but it's already gone through the planning process and those plans have been approved, so it's not subject to what we're creating here.
It's not taken advantage of. It didn't apply for an AB 2011 SB6. Right. So you've been very patient.
So I understand that probably some of the objective of the state for AB 2011 and SB6 is to provide more housing on sites that previously weren't, basically. So when we provide these objective standards, which really start to restrict that ability, does the city risk anything as far as this HCD coming down on them in saying that's too restrictive, you know, the spirit of the law is this, and if so, are there kind of bunker guards as to how far the city can really go? So if you said, oh, every 20 feet we want open space, yeah, right? Which is not reason, I'm just being very exaggerated, my opinion or my example. I just want to know, it's great to have these objective standards. I understand the strategy and being preemptive and trying to get some, you know, barriers around what the developer can do so you can have an end product that the community is happy with. But again, who's the ultimate decider here? I mean, it's great to have the standard and the objective defined within the city. Could the state come back in and say, no, this is too restrictive for development? So I'm just curious, because I think if we had our druthers, we'd say, oh, we want open space, every development of this, but how realistic do we have to be, and do you have an idea of where that kind of parameter is?
Yeah, we do actually. So we are implementing we have our R30 standards, which is something that HCD approved.
Okay.
Right. So, and then we did what I mentioned earlier. So we took some actual, our urban designer, because that's not my primary skill set, but took some sites and did what we call scenario planning and looking at, like, if we had this kind of setback on the front and the rear and the sides, and you know, can they still get a developable footprint, is what we call it in the industry. So ensuring that there's an adequate development footprint is really kind of the measure. Okay. You know, if you had like 50-foot front yard setbacks, 30-foot, you know, rear yard, and 20 feet, you know, then you clearly, it's not industry standard. Like, we know that's just not the norm in how we do land development. So that would be a red flag, you know, and it would not, it wouldn't comply with the HCD requirements.
So do you have an idea where you can, the limit by which you can change up to? I mean, do you say this would probably be a tolerable and acceptable standard, an objective standard, or is that not yet tested because this is new legislation, because this is now you're opening up a mixed use in a commercial zone? So is there precedent in which you can say, okay, you can get away with this objective standard, but this may, if your developable footprint is reduced by this much, it's not going to fly. So I mean, it's great for us to have our input here, but we also have to understand, I'm assuming, that there are limitations to what we can demand as far as an objective standard. Is that fair to say?
Yes, you're absolutely spot on. That's correct. We have to be careful, and that's why utilizing our R30, and that's actually, we've got legal input.
So that's going to be the barometer.
Yeah, that's our default density, and knowing that there's things that we like requiring a 30-foot setback when you're adjacent to residential, requiring that 30-foot setback, there's facade breaks already it's within 75 feet. You get a building plane. If it's flat, it has to be offset by a minimum of 5 feet, and those kind of criteria. So that's all been legally vetted, and it's been accepted by HCD. And then we've just gone the next step and did some additional site scenario planning where we took site plans and worked with our urban designer and said, what does this look like? Is this, do you measure it from this spot or this location? Is that going to impede? Is that circulation? There's all kinds of technical things that you have to consider as well as just setbacks, you know, and looking at landscaping and screening and parking and all those things. They inherently eat up space on a site as well.
So for as our input, it's really generalized ideas, like we'd like more open space or greater setbacks. We're not saying we want every 3 feet or, you know, specifically because we don't know the threshold or, you know, the limitations of what would be acceptable. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's why we utilize the professionals to create these tools to help guide you with some of the things that are really industry appropriate and standard, and to create those great facades and those streetscapes and what is unique or what could help reinforce the funkiness of Leucadia or things that you like.
So more broad stroke kind of open space is important, setting back as light is important.
Yes. All of that is wonderful feedback. And that's why, you know, these are really, a lot of work went into identifying and calling out those features. I mean, they're very strategic and they comply with what we're allowed to require pursuant to the confines of the bills. So they're really great tools and hoping to get you thinking. And you know, sometimes we don't think about what we like about something, but when it's called out like that, it can help us realize, oh, this is really cool. I like this, or I don't like that. And so all that kind of feedback, like Megan was saying, if you provide it to us, we can work with the experts and they can kind of work with it and massage it and make it more objective and comply with the requirements of the law. And still help us, because the goal is to maintain the community character to the extent that we can.
Thank you for that.
Can I add a couple of points to that? One, you asked kind of about standards for evaluating the effectiveness of objective standards. State law does refer to a reasonable person standard. Whatever that means in the court of law, I don't know, but that's what it says. So I think what's not reasonable is the things Patty was talking about. A 50-foot setback, we can all probably agree is not reasonable. Most of the stuff is in the gray area in between, though, and that's difficult to decide who's being reasonable when. We, when we're developing objective design standards, think a lot about worst case scenarios, large developments, and things like that. So that's really what we're trying to control through these tools. And then the other thing I wanted to put out there that we have not talked about tonight is density bonus. These projects would be eligible for density bonus waivers, concessions, and incentives. So some of these objective design standards could be waived. One of the things we've talked about doing with the objective design standards to address that is to provide a lot of different standards so that when standards get waived, there are other standards that still provide variation in the facade if they still need to waive a volume break, there's still facade modulation. And then the other thing about reasonableness and enforcement, I think for this law there is a minimum density. So if the objective design standards were making the project but go below that density, that could be an area where you run into conflict. So I just wanted to make sure that was all out there as well.
Yeah, because I think that it could be misconstrued. Oh, we'll have these standards and they won't be able to, you know, do the density, and they won't be able to do. So I think it's, you know, important for us to have reasonable expectations of how much control you can get out of standards or objective standards, basically. Because you know.
And I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's not like we have ultimate control, but we're trying to do what we can to put the best objectives in place. And like Matt said, you know, we thought about that too, because we know they do waivers, concessions, and standards. So trying to even be preemptive and how to work around that is part of the process. Brenda?
Yeah, so you mentioned that in order to even fall into the category of being vulnerable to AB 2011 and SB 6, you had to have 100-foot common space, public space in between each project. Is that correct? So what I envision is that it's not 100-foot from, I thought it was from curb to curb or something.
The right of way, yes. And that's only for one project type, the AB 2011 mixed income, which is the most permissive or of the AB 2011 project types, it has the most permissive affordability requirements.
I'm wondering, Streetscape
Yeah.
hasn't gone in on a large portion of North 101 corridor. Do we have the ability to reduce that distance so that it's not even vulnerable to this kind of event?
I don't know if that is something that it would comply with our circulation element, reducing the general plan. I don't know.
And how close are we? Like, we might already be close with only 2 lanes each direction.
The requirement
Or 1 lane
is
each direction.
to be eligible for the AB 2011 mixed income is between 70 feet and 150 feet, and then it differs at 100 feet what your requirements are. So you can still be eligible, but you're subject to different requirements. Gonna take a breath. This is only for the mixed income type, but for the 100% affordable, it's regardless of the roadway width, and that's true for the SB6
So then we
project.
could
So
be
that wouldn't
signing up
change
for something
anything.
worse than what we're going to get.
Yeah, who's gonna fund the 100% affordable? It's not gonna be a developer. That's not what they do.
Very few. Very few.
100%.
Yeah.
Could you talk about parking requirements in these different scenarios?
Yeah.
And I mean, what I'm getting at, I'm thinking in horror. I mean, you drive down the little coast highway in Lucadia, and it's so small, and here you have a 3-4 story, God forbid, building with apartments and all these cars pouring out, and I just don't. Or finding street parking available, or are there going to be requirements for parking structures, or how is all that going to fit in?
I believe AB 2011 mixed income projects cannot require parking. And I'm assuming that's also true for the affordable, since it's affordable housing, that logic would carry forward. I'm not sure about the SB6 project type, but I would assume there's no.
If I can
Unless
add,
it's R30.
if I can add, for the mixed income, the state law, the government code specifically says parking cannot be required, but for SB6 and the AB 2011 100% affordable, it defaults to the R30. So then it would go to our normal standards unless they are applying density bonus or whatnot and get that parking reduction. But it would be subject to normal R30 parking requirements.
Could you what is the requirement for R30?
In 3054, the off-street parking requirements, studio apartments, 1.5 space per unit, 1 to 2 bedroom units, 2 spaces, 3 bedroom or more, 2.5 spaces per unit. So that's required in our municipal code.
But it's not, if they get the density bonus, then that gets reduced.
If they get the density bonus, then a studio and 1 bedroom will get 1 space per unit. 2 to 3 bedrooms, 1.5 space per unit. 4 or more bedrooms, 2 spaces.
Who's kidding? So you've done the math and you've seen the worst case scenario, like you talked about with design, but also with these numbers. So give us the real deal. Like when someone wants the max, like the Fox Point and all the horrible things we're seeing. I just drove on Cove Gardens and I felt like the building was falling on me. It was so bad. Like, tell us the worst case scenario. Like, what could someone actually have dwelling units per acre? I mean, honestly, 100, 200.
Depending on their eligibility criteria, right? And if they meet the 80 DU per acre and they did a density bonus.
Mm-hmm. So tell us.
I haven't done that.
It depends on the lot size. So.
Well, I'm just saying per acre.
So will you know the lots
Oh, you
that
mean
are
the bigger acres
are
will be more dense?
eligible? Pick a lot.
So say it's 1 acre. I don't know if there is anything 1 acre. Well, anyway,
Yeah, I don't know that we've done it
So,
like on a site, testing all of the standards all together. I think we've given a general sense of what the limitations are in the law and tried to let you know there are ways to go above that, both in density and height. And some of that depends on the exact affordability makeup, the site conditions, and things like that. So it varies considerably, but we do know it's higher than what's allowed in the city today.
So, from your experience, because I know you have worked with other cities, so can you bring us next week some examples of cities who have been better about foreseeing the future and being prepared for what we're now faced with? This city has failed us, literally failed us in preparing for this moment. And I appreciate all the work the 5 of you are doing. It is so important. It's critical. I wish everyone, we all found out about this last night on some weird email that went around to friends.
And we thought
That's
it
how
was
we
for
found out
something
about
else.
it. And so we didn't even know what it was about. The whole city should be here. Like the whole city should know about this. It should be broadcast on our television. It should be on the internet. It should have been on the Granicus Agenda website page for the last week or two. Our city council members are acting like they didn't even know about this tonight.
Yeah.
Like literally. I'm not even joking.
This is a email.
And so
Thank you, I got yours.
So I don't think anyone knew exactly. And anyway, maybe they did, but so can you bring us examples of cities who have done the work and done the best job and done some things to prevent the worst case scenarios and to prevent it from just being well gardens? Like examples of what we can do. I get it. If we want variation in roof, we're going to have to, make it a little less restrictive so that we can also get some variation in facade. Maybe we can get decks and outdoor spaces for people and some windows. And keep, so if we forego window space, we can still get some deck space. Or if we forego changes in roofs, we can still get different front variations. Like, give us some examples because we don't know. We don't know. We have a flex unit. We have a flex unit in Hawaii that we rent out. It's commercial under and it's residential above. It's not low income or anything like that. But they did such an amazing job. Every unit's a different color. We've all got different surfaces. One's wood and the next is stucco. It doesn't look like Fox Point Farms all white the same. It doesn't look like that. It's so beautiful. And the roofs are a little bit different. They're different angles. They're different substrates. We have dog parks. We have all these things. Like I don't want more of the same. We need to, and it sounds like it's going to be worse than we're getting. I don't know. I don't want to sound like alarmed, but this is highly concerning. And I know there have been cities who have hopefully done more homework than we've done. And I'd like you to bring some examples to us so we can see what that means because we don't do this for a living.
Especially
so, I don't know.
The beach area, because the beach area alongside 101 may go all the way up. I hate to talk about San Francisco, but south of San Francisco down to Coronado. I mean, I know this started probably in 2022. The AB.
2022 was when those bills were passed.
Okay. So there must be some examples that she's bringing up that maybe you can bring forward, because then we can look at it. I mean, fashion designers got to see what's good, what's a mistake, and what's a winner.
Examples, questions, regulating development.
Yeah, and you even did the analysis. You looked at, there were only like 12.
Yeah, so this is not a very well-used part of state law as of today. The bill went into effect, or was passed in 2022. It went into effect July of 2023. So that's a year and a half that they made it effective in July 2023. So they passed in 2022. The state gave jurisdictions 6 months to do something if they wanted to at that point. So then it started July 1st, 2023. So it's been a year and a half since this bill has been effective for local jurisdictions throughout the state. I don't know about 2023. I didn't hear about any projects using that. I did check the data for 2024 that was recently published from the state. There was maybe 15 applications from the top of the state to the bottom of the state. So it's not a super well used, again, that's as of today and through 2024. I mean, it's a super complicated bill. There's a ton of hoops to jump through. So I think there's reasons it's not being used because of all of the requirements that come with it. So not to say someone's not going to figure it out and that they're going to find a site that has the return that's worth the risk. That's what developers do. But that's why we're here today, to talk about what if that happens here in Encinitas, what can the city do about it?
But so Rachel, like your comments, like the things that you just mentioned are perfect for what we're trying to get here.
Yeah.
Like varying surface materials, varying colors, doing those
I think
setbacks.
there's like 12 things right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what our limits, with that. Like
Those
made a
are
really good
group.
point.
You're speaking the language.
You made a
so.
really good point to not make anything too crazy by giving up other things, so that then when you do give
a waiver.
Then you're not just destroying all.
But so like your 12 things, we can add to keep adding, and so when they ask for waivers on 4 or 5, we still have 20 for them to choose from, right? So that's great. That's exactly the kind of feedback, and we were hoping like these things right here, if you come and look closely, I think they're going to spur, like you just said, oh, in my condo we have this, that, and the other, or my unit we have this, and it's beautiful. That's exactly the kind of things that we want to hear, so we can add those in as objective standards, and that doesn't limit the development, right? Varying the material, exterior, it doesn't limit their developable envelope. It just helps make good quality design. So that's perfect.
And we want to help you do this as soon as possible, like as fast. We want to help you get this done.
Yeah,
because
we
we were
just
told by
didn't know.
Lake Spirit that none of those properties that they designated that are now huge, they were just, you guys were just doing this. They're never going to actually build on them. So we know someone's going to do it, so we want to get this done as soon as possible.
And then I wanted to just address examples as well. I don't know about examples that are ultimately effective against this project type, but I will say Del Mar has objective design standards adopted, Carlsbad has objective design standards adopted, Santee, for what that's worth. There's probably a couple of others. I'm happy to kind of bring those next week if that's helpful.
Yes.
They come in all different flavors. Temecula has some. They address a range of topics. So
I think coastal communities, so with Del Mar and Carlsbad, is very relevant to us, and the fact that we also want to preserve Encinitas and Leucadia area, that we want to somehow weave in the existing look and feel somehow.
How specific can you be?
Fallbrook, it's park-like, and what we want to see there also for sure.
okay. I don't know if they have objective design
I thought you
standards.
just said they did.
Fallbrook? No.
She said Temecula.
Temecula.
Temecula, that would be good.
Sure.
Can you require that utilities be undergrounded?
Sure.
That's a good start.
Sure.
Yes.
Put that down.
That's a good idea. We often require screening. Undergrounding is tough, and some of these things are restricted by the operational needs of the utility providers too. So again, like, put out what you want, start there, and then let people tell you no. If you don't put it in the objective design standards, it will never get done. So
Do you want to spend some time looking at these, because we really want to get your feedback, like what Rachel shared. Like, we really would love to hear from you what you think, and these tools will help spur the creative juices, I think, to what might be helpful, what might not. But did you have one more question?
I won't go through those two.
Sorry.
After July 15th, I think I've read that when you get all the information, it's going to go to the planning commission. And what's that time frame? What's the time frame from July 15th? Because that is, what is that? Meeting 3 or 4?
Yeah, I can clarify. So next week we're doing a focus for the downtown Encinitas specific plan, and then we're tentatively scheduled to do a joint planning commission, city council, and community-wide meeting on September 10th. That's tentative.
I can send that.
Is there any way to redo the first one, or is this inclusive?
I listened to it. It was a nothing burger. There was one dude here.
This was all of it.
I mean, they went through these slides and there was no community.
It was pretty similar in terms of content shared. We went deeper into AB 2011 and into the weeds, and I think we've had a productive conversation that we can work with.
Here. If you send an email, and then I can send you.
And if there's anything that's not on the boards, but any other comments that you'd like to share, like Matt said, the comment cards.
Does anyone want a workshop with specific prompts?
What's that? Add to the board, or you can put it in the comment card. We have people over here.